Hello, Tamsin. How are you?
Hi, Laura. I'm good. How are you doing?
Thanks so much for being here. I kind of slid into your DMs, I think a month ago, and I asked you if you wanted to be on here without even really telling you what you were getting yourself into. But thank you so much for trusting me and for being on.
Yeah, I know. I love it. I got a chance to look at your feed and listen to your podcast episodes, especially the most recent ones. And I just felt really aligned. And it seemed like somebody that I want to get to know and chat with. And I really like what you've been representing. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So we have a lot in common. Well, Tamsin wasn't born in New York, but she lived in New York for a time. We're both Korean. We're both Asian Americans. We're both in our, I don't know what phase of life we are in, but we're definitely not in our 20s.
Yeah.
I'm shifting out of my 30s. So I guess we're in our best years of our lives.
Yes.
And what I love about your feed on Instagram is how outspoken you are and the way you write and the feeling that I get from your messages is like, yes, you are representing our ancestors. So thank you for showing up like that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my personal feed is definitely much more vocal, and some posts I think quite a while about, and like it's just a reflection. I want to be very thoughtful of my words. Other times it's just like it's like a therapy session for me, which probably isn't a good thing. I don't recommend it because it just lashes out. I get very angry. I was born in Kansas, but I was raised in New York, so I think New Yorkers were just New Yorkers and Koreans are fiery people.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that stays in your blood.
Oh, yeah. I love that combination because I think if my parents immigrated to a different state, I definitely don't think they would be as stubborn and fiery as they are as parents.
Yeah, I mean, when you meet West Coast Asians, right? It's so different. I'm
So
like,
different.
what?
I know, like my parents both fuck this, fuck that. And I think that's where I got that from. And when my mom hears me speaking, she's like, stop saying that word. And I'm like, where do you think I got it from?
Yeah, I definitely like have a tendency to piss off people. Some like older Asians too, just from my political stance. And my parents are great. They're so supportive. They're like, don't listen to them. Like, keep saying, like my nickname from my family is Dragon, like in Korean. So
Love
it's like
that.
they know, and I definitely get it from them. So it's not like they can say anything.
I fucking love that. What is dragon in Korean?
Uh, well, my dad calls me Dragon, so it's like Young Young, and I call him Original Dragon because he's got a temper. And then my little nephew is Baby Dragon because he's like 3, but he's like so fierce. Like,
I love that. Well, I think at this point in our history, we're all awakening the inner dragon within us, especially what's going on with Asian American hate crimes. And I know this stuff happens all over the world, but I think for the first time, it's really being visible to Americans in general. And before we press record, I asked you how you were doing, and I just wanted to check in again. Like, how are you moving through this time?
yeah. So it has been difficult in the last few weeks, just hearing about. I mean, every day it seems like you just see something on the news of an elder being assaulted or murdered, and I had to like step away from Instagram and like kind of put people on pause because I just can't, just seeing that, like even the videos, like I haven't been able to watch the videos even last year when like Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and George Floyd were murdered. I couldn't even watch those videos. Um and it's and then today was the shooting of the Asian women in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's been raw, and I think because I'm in this field of East Asian medicine, and our professional organizations have continued to stay silent about these issues, and have yet to make a public statement, even when I was talking about this a year ago, because even though I'm in this field, like my job is a researcher and I was based at the University of Washington. So my world was really public health research. It had nothing to do with acupuncture. And the fact that like they were collecting massive data of like all the violence. And I think coming from New York, like you and I, you know, we were there when 9/11 happened and the aftermath of 9/11 and what happened to Muslims. And my best friend at the time was Pakistani and she is Muslim. So that brought a lot of things that I had never had to deal with about xenophobia, right? And so the fact that I'm in this field that's continued to remain silent, but also within this past year, they've like put in strategic policies to exclude Asians from access to getting our licenses, degrees, scholarships, everything, you know? So it's like they went out of their way to do this. And so it's been just like a mix of raw emotions. And I told you, like, yesterday was the first time I actually cried about this. I think I was just holding it in, I was bottling up, and I finally cried. And so there was this release. So I feel a lot more, I don't know, things are moving. So, yeah, now I feel like in the next few days, I'm going to be real pissed off. Like now that the sadness has like left and it's like, okay.
Yeah. You know, when we went through last year and seeing all of the things that were happening with BLM, it really did bring back almost like traumatic memories from 9/11, and the fact that we all went through that as New Yorkers and didn't really, well, at least for me, I didn't really process that time. I just kind of went through my life and it changed my life, but I just, you know, went about my life, you know, finished college, and I never fully grasped the severity of that situation and how our entire life, I mean, I saw it from my dorm room,
Did you go to NYU? Were you at that dorm?
I was in Manhattan College.
Uh-huh.
But whew, yeah, I remember last year that I was remembering that trauma again, and same, I couldn't even watch those videos because it would just make me feel all over again what we experienced in 2001. And again, with this going on, I was just like, it just reminded me that it's never going to end, this cycle of violence, until we actually do something about it. And that's why, in my own way, I was super raw before I even came on here, and I was telling you that. But the one thing I can do is my part, which is bringing a voice to Asian women's faces, speaking about these things, speaking about our stories, and that just gives me more drive and lights a fire under my ass to be like, no, you can't, I'm not going to be afraid and be silenced. Like, so it's one step at a time, but I appreciate you being so vulnerable and so honest as a Virgo yourself.
Oh no, my secret's out. I know. I think you made it really clear. Like, as Asian women don't ever get a platform to actually speak about things like this or other things, you know? And I've been really reflecting in the last couple months. I don't know why, just like of women of color and like all the stereotypes that are associated with us, and how harming and violent it is for us to even exist. Like, not only have to think about like our racial and ethnic identity, but gender identity. And then I think of all the trans women that have to exist within all of this too. So it's like layers and layers of being like different pivot points of trying to silence us. And I think in the spiritual wellness field, Asian voices aren't really heard. And
even though it's our mental, which is what I wanted to talk to you about, because I think now my recollection is coming back to me. So this is a nice, fun story. So my parents are Korean, and my mom in particular is super into acupuncture and like Eastern medicine. So I never actually really went to, I know this sounds like not kosher, but I didn't go to a regular doctor when I would have um, like a twisted ankle or a headache or period cramps or stuff like that. She would bring me to her acupuncturist, and it was like this 90-year-old Chinese man who was like, that was in his lineage, and he was the last one. His son didn't want to do that. His son like went to college for like engineering or something, and in high school he was going to retire because he's 90 years old. But anytime I would go to him, like when I would fall from doing track, or I would have a little twisted ankle, which I probably would have needed a cast for or something, or I would have acne or period cramps, I would go to him and he would like just look at me and know what was wrong, and after a few treatments I would be completely fine. So my belief in Eastern medicine started at a very young age. Like I just knew that whatever this man knew, he knew something, and it was magical. And then he retired, and then I've never had an acupuncturist since then. So that was high school, and I've been kind of like searching in and out. You know, I've seen a couple of Korean ones, like, but I've never found a woman, a Korean or Chinese woman who practices acupuncture, because they're all white women. So I was searching, and then I found you, and I was like, oh my God, she's Korean. But then I started looking through your feed, and you were saying those things about, you know, this is our medicine and this is our ancestry. And then I was like, she's right. Why are all the women that why are all the acupuncturists or Chinese medicine people that I've been seeking out white? And then it just brought me down this rabbit hole of like wanting to know, and you would probably know this the most, like, why has it become like, I don't want to say colonized or taken away from us, but maybe that is the right word.
You can say that.
Well, I don't know like how that all happened, because all of a sudden I like, it was just all white women who made it trending, you know?
Yeah. Your acupuncture Eastern medicine experience is so different from mine, because I grew up with Korean medicine. My parents, my family, they always got Korean medicine, acupuncture cupping. I was on Korean herbs when I was a kid. But then I didn't believe in it for the longest time, because I'm trying to assimilate to American Western culture. And I I woke up paralyzed from the waist down one day, and I didn't have health insurance at the time. And I went back home, and I like laid in my parents' bed for like 3 days, not being able to walk, which really humbles you, because losing your innate ability to walk and having your own parents, like as a grown adult, like take you to the bathroom, there's nothing more humbling than that. And my parents were like, why don't you go see an acupuncturist? And I was like, I'm so desperate. I don't know what else to do. So like you, he was an old Korean man though, in his house. I don't know if he was licensed or whatever. On the floor, there's no like Zen music, water fountain, like aromatherapy, right? Like straight up on the floor, there was a mat. And it was the most intense experience. I was sweating. He was just doing needles down my legs, and I could just feel this energy just and I couldn't walk after. I mean, I couldn't walk after the treatment. And then I went to see him like 3 times a week, was on herbs. And then by the second week, I could kind of walk. And then a month, I was able to walk
Oh
again.
my gosh.
Yeah. And I wish I could tell you. And then I went to acupuncture school and became no, I was still stubborn. I like quit my job. I had all this money that I was saving to buy this really cute apartment in the meatpacking district that I still sometimes look at the building. Dumped my boyfriend and bought a one-way ticket, and I traveled for like 2 years. Um, and then I came back, and but after the acupuncture treatment, even though I couldn't walk, like I had this like sense of clarity in my head that like I've never felt before. This peace, like this clarity. I can't even like I still remember it, but it made me realize my whole childhood I was such an anxious, depressed kid. And that moment of clarity I had never experienced before. And so that's what I think is so beautiful about this medicine, that not only helped me walk again, it like shifted my consciousness enough for me to like change my whole life. And then I came back and I still didn't want to do this. I ended up working up for a bunch of magazines, travel writing. And then I was like, you know what? I really went into acupuncture school trying to figure out what happened to me and how I could prevent that from ever happening. Like I had no intention. I really was like, I don't want to help people. I don't really care. I just want to help me. And then I went into it kind of like, I think this was just like an anomaly that happened to me. I don't think this can happen to other people, like this powerful medicine. And I almost went into it like as a skeptic. And my tagline is, you know, skeptic but curious human being, because I am very skeptical. I think in the last couple of years, as I've really delved closer to like the cultural roots of this medicine, our ancestors, and now I'm at a point where like I don't need to know how this works, like scientifically or anything. It just works, and it's incredible medicine. And to say, you know, the history of our professionalism in the US of Chinese medicine, really there were Chinese immigrants since like the 1800s, right? And they were using this medicine amongst their communities. And in the 70s, when Nixon went to China, saw acupuncture, the big story, came back, there were four or five white guys that were kind of studying this, and they decided upon them to professionalize the medicine, basically, which meant that they were going to open up schools, get licensing, certifications, make it professional, legitimate. That excluded tons of Asian practitioners that weren't able to speak English, didn't have the money to go to school. Around the same time, the Black Panthers and Young Lords in New York were using this medicine for community acupuncture because their community was dying of drugs and substance abuse. And so they had learned from Chinese practitioners in Chinatown. And so they were using this medicine and bringing it back to the community, honoring the medicine, honoring their teachers. They went to China. Some of them went to China to like study under these teachers, like how it's meant to be. And at the same time, these white dudes were opening up these schools. And it just became this thing where you could only access this medicine and become licensed if you had money and you could speak English and get into these schools. And it just proliferated since the 70s. And that's why our racial ethnic demographic amongst acupuncturists hasn't changed. I just did a huge study, and it hasn't changed in the 70s. It's predominantly white women, which is ironic because the teachers are mostly white men, which is a whole other thing. And then the patient demographic mostly is still white, middle-aged, educated women. And now what you see with social media is not just white women, specifically young, thin, blonde white women representing this medicine. And it's kind of went into other places. Like I just did a clubhouse, and the beauty wellness industry is a whole other thing because gua sha is being very big right now.
Yeah.
That's a whole other cultural appropriation that I'm learning a lot about that is really kind of scary.
So it is colonization.
Yes.
When a white dude goes to China and then brings it back and then whitewashes it and then sells it.
I don't even know if they went to China. I have to look at that. I don't even know if they went to, they had an Asian teacher, but they decided to, in order to make this professional, they needed to get licensing, and then it ended up just being this other institution that's built on capitalism, that's built on power and privilege, that is excluding certain people. And any sort of big institution, it's built on racism.
Which is what happens to every spiritual practice that is brought to America, I'm finding. That's why I studied in Kundalini Yoga in India. And I mean, I studied Reiki here in New York, but I made sure that my teacher was Asian. Well, one of my teachers. But every spiritual practice or certification is westernized to where you learn from somebody who's usually a white person. It just is. I'm just stating the fact. Okay. So people don't come at me. and they put a price on it, and then you go through the program, you study a bunch of stuff, take a test, and then you get a certification, and then that's it. That was my experience with a lot of these spiritual practices. And the more I learn about these practices, as you were just describing, is that you would go to the land or study under the person that the lineage is carried under, and they kind of mentor you in this very like sensei, Mr. Miyagi kind of way. And that is why I try my best when I take on students, that I only take on a certain amount so that I can mentor them, not just like a factory where I'm like, okay, everyone gets a certificate, yeah. Because also you have to ask, like, what is your intention of taking a spiritual practice or a wellness practice that's not of your own lineage, and then practicing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not saying that white folks can't practice these medicine, because some of my teachers are white teachers that I really respect. And some of my colleagues are incredible acupuncturists. I think it's a lot of things, right? It's like the commercialization and capitalization of these medicines, but also because I also meet a lot of I can only speak for Eastern medicine, but like Asian acupuncturists that I don't trust, and that are in it for the money, and they are sellouts, and their mission doesn't align with mine. So it's really like looking at like what you said, like what is your intention of sharing this? And what happens is, like, I tell acupuncture students all the time, like, school is just for you to get licensed. That's it. Don't even stress about it. Like, just study it. You're going to dump it when you graduate. And then your real education starts. What you do after you graduate, who you study under, all the life shit that you go through, that where you can process all your healing and then hold space for your patients that are in pain. Like, that's how you become a better practitioner, a better healer. But what happens now is, like, you get the certification, then you can open up your own school and start teaching, and now you're the expert,
Right.
like within 3 months.
Yeah.
It's like, and then meanwhile, we're always drawn to these things because we're processing our own shit.
Yes.
So they haven't even processed that. So it's like, then you start projecting this onto your patients, and then and if you grow, you become this like guru status, like shaman leader, like, and it's a very like cult like mentality.
Yeah. Because the person hasn't integrated all of what they've learned yet into the embodiment of being the teacher based on real lived experiences. That's where I see the gap there. It's like everyone wants to get the 200-hour yoga teacher certification or the Reiki certification, but I always say the actual work is when you're just living as being a human being and healing your own shit.
Yeah. And like surviving and then sharing whatever you learn from that. Yeah, like yoga is a perfect example. And that's why I speak so loudly about Eastern medicine, because yoga is already like this weird thing that like I've practiced yoga for decades, but it's only in the last few years that I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck yoga is. I don't know what the hell I've been doing, like I don't. And
how could you?
And I've done different types, right? Like asana. I even done like bhakti, kirtan, like different types. But like, I'm pretty sure what I've been doing isn't what yoga is. And
No.
and yeah, and I don't even go to those like happy hour cocktail. And it's a weird industry. Like everyone's super skinny. Like you have to wear these like $200 leggings made by this dude that like created a company that is totally racist. We all know who that is. And it scares me because I see Eastern medicine going down that. So I love the people in the yoga practice who are speaking up about this. And it makes me want to learn what yoga really is, because yoga has helped me tremendously.
Oh my God, it's not the only thing that has changed my life, but as you said, when I went to India and studied from Indian teachers where it's in their lineage, yoga just means unity, yog. but Americans have strapped on a fancy, like you said, like a fancy yoga thing, yoga image aesthetic, and made it become about just the body, about working out. But there are 8 limbs in yoga, and the asanas are just one of them. It's really about getting your body into a state of meditation, actually, and having more awareness for yourself. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. How could you have known that if all the teachers are doing the same thing? You would never know unless you looked it up for yourself.
Yeah. And then it makes me wonder, like, why do we always have to modernize and like make things sexy? Like, why does this medicine has to be, why does,
Marketing.
yeah, you know? And that to me, like, if you take a step back, it's like, why are we even drawn to that? Like, we should be drawn to more like the realness of it, like the real stuff, rather than like, yeah.
I think it all goes back to decolonizing all of our minds. Like you mentioned about, even Asian people having to adapt to our capitalistic structures. I think all of us, me included, like I'm constantly asking myself, like, am I doing this with like a colonization mentality, or like, what are my true intentions here? So it's all work that we have to do. But you're a doctor, so when you finally were like, yes, I want to learn this, and you went to school, what was your like, and you wanted to learn it for your own self, but what was your like aha moment that you wanted to actually help people?
I'm like, have I had that moment yet?
You're like, I'm still waiting.
It's still about me. I'm a Leo moon, so that
my word. And you're a Virgo. Oh my God. Yeah. This all makes so much sense.
It's wonderful. Yeah. You're welcome. I didn't even go into this field like, yes, I want to do this. I went to like, ugh, I can't, like, I'm going to go into this to figure out, because there's a lot about this field, this industry that really turned me off. All the exoticization, the Orientalism, like, everything I saw with acupuncture was like red, dragon, smoke, like exotic, foreign. And I was like, this is so gross. Like, but I went into it trying to figure out like what happened to me. And so, I had to sit there and like see all this shit that like is just a huge stereotype of Asian culture. That's just a watered down version of the richness of our culture, like I can only speak for Korean culture. Like man, like look at everything about Korean culture, like the food, the colors. When you get into like Korean shamanism, like it's so beautiful and rich and empowering and like just full of stories. And so
and magic.
Yeah. And I think when I started, I honestly was just on this healing journey throughout school just to fix myself. Like, and I experienced a huge traumatic event while I was in school that I had to take the summer off and heal literally like basically my brain, because I was diagnosed with acute PTSD. I was having like hallucinations, like that's how deep it was. And then I came back and I had incredible mentors and the administrators were awesome. My class, however, were a bunch of jerks. And so I had to deal with a lot of gossiping and like, it wasn't a very compassionate environment. So by the time I got into clinic, I just, like I said, like I had gone through so much shit that I realized that I can hold space for people. I might not have the knowledge of all the points and patterns and herb formulas. I still have to look it up, but I can at least sit there and listen to people in pain and hear them and be compassionate, because I had experienced like a year of people that I thought should have been compassionate towards me weren't. And so I knew what compassion felt like, because I knew what suffering felt like. And in that year, my patients were awesome. Like even the front desk people were like, your patients are really good. I'm like, I know. And you really attract the people that you like want. And they were incredible. A lot of them were just so resilient. Like, and a lot of them were also BIPOC, which in Portland, Oregon was very unique. And around that time, Trump was, I think, Trump was getting elected, I guess. Yeah. And so all of us were, meeting each other weekly and trying to process this thing that was happening globally, like in the treatment room, and they helped me so much. Like my greatest teachers are really my patients. And I think in that moment I realized maybe that I don't know if I like helping people, but I like witnessing people because it's healing to me.
Yeah.
And so that, I guess that sounds a little selfish, but
No, it doesn't at all. Well, you're able to hold space for people because you've been able to deal with your own shit. I think that's why us as healers go through so much crap, because
it's never ending.
it's never ending.
Again.
I know. But I think that was what I believe my soul wrote this into our little plan here, so that I knew the depths of sorrow and the depths of getting over adversity to hold space for people, like you said. And that's such a beautiful thing, because I really do believe that your ability to go deep within yourself is how you attract your clients and how you attract the people that are meant for you.
Yeah. And it's incredible to see another person just work through their suffering. And it gives me hope. Like in my darkest moments, it's like, they did it. Like I just saw it. And so, it's possible that, yeah, I miss them. My patients were awesome.
So now you're in Seattle.
Yeah, I'm in Seattle. I don't see patients, but I do see clients for face reading. So that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, so okay, let's get into what you do, because it's so interesting. Do you still do acupuncture and all the traditional Chinese, Korean medicine?
So in the last 2-3 years, I was doing a postdoc at the University of Washington, being a researcher, like more like a public health researcher. And my grant just ended a couple months ago. So I couldn't see patients because it was just full-time researching. I did it for friends and family. But face reading is something that I've been studying for a while. And then I kind of just did it on the side, like as a little side hustle, passion project that I wasn't really putting a lot of effort into, but I would see clients when they came. And now that's been building. And I'm in this life transition right now where I don't know if I still want to do research. There's so much about it that I don't like. It's another system, another institution that I have to exist in. And in that institution for Asians, it's even more difficult for like us to get funding, to like prove that we need money to like find what's going on with our communities.
Yeah.
And ironically, like the face reading has just been growing fast. And so intuitively I'm like, I feel like this is a sign. And when I do meet with my face reading clients, when I talk about face reading, it just makes me happier. And I feel like I can do social justice work with this thing that's very out there, but do it in a way that like really helps people. And yeah.
It's so unique. So the Korean word is gwansang. Am I saying that right? Oh my God, my Korean.
I don't know. I would butcher it too. That's why I'm glad you said it. We need a Korean translator. Get your mom to come here.
I know this is one of my goals of 2021 is to learn Korean again and get more into my Korean roots. But I had a funny story for you, because my mom told me the story of when I was born, and I don't know how to say this in a non-racist way to myself, but I had very small eyes. Like they were super up and super small. And my mom, because looks are really important to Korean people, like a lot. And everybody in the family was a little worried about my eyes and how and how small and up they were. And my mom's doctor was a Korean man, And he said, don't worry. I've seen, because he's delivered like thousands and thousands of Korean babies. I was born in Flushing Hospital. And he
That's
said,
where my brother was born.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I feel like we've known each other.
Now you just said Flushing. Now I'm like craving all the food, the jjajangmyeon.
Oh, visit me.
Yeah. Oh my God, I would.
We're getting off track now because I'm like, let's
Koreans also love food.
Yeah.
Very beauty conscious, but also very like foodie.
Yes, I love our culture, except for the beauty part. But anyway, but the doctor told my mom, because she kept asking, don't worry, it's gonna go down as she ages. And it was true. And she said he saw something in my face as a baby. And I was super pink too, like weirdly pink. And the doctor said, don't worry, she's going to be very beautiful and the eyes are going to go down and it's going to work out to her favor. And I was like, what did he see in my face that maybe other people didn't see? So I wanted to ask you, is like that a thing?
Yeah, I mean, like our faces are changing like throughout our whole lives. And I Koreans have this like, you know, we grow up with these things being said to us. Like definitely grew up like my mom's family, it's all about dreams and faces and they just say these things like, you know, in between passing, and you don't realize like this is actually like medicine that they're passing along. I grew up thinking that these were like superstitious like things, myths, right? But you know, we don't typically face read children because until they're like 25, because you can often project your like a stage mom, like project your own hopes and dreams on a child and literally form their face and personality and the way they behave and communicate to your ideas. So we don't do that. And then after 25 is really like 25 to like 50s kind of, it's really this time where what they say is that before then you have the face of your mom or your family. So these are the people that have taken care of you. And so obviously their hopes, dreams, even fears are on your face and it's like shaped your face. But after that, your whole goal is really to find your original face, your authentic face. So every challenge you've gone through in your life, every decision you've made, it's like little tiny shifts and that change the shapes of your like features. Not like hugely drastically, like it's not like you're gonna look like a totally different person or a different race, but little tiny shifts that you can pay attention to. And then if you do that like around the 60s, 70s, 80s, that's when you really have your original face. And in Chinese medicine they call that, when menopause hits, they call it the second spring. It's when you no longer have the obligations of raising children, of being, you know, somebody else. Like this is your time to really focus on yourself again, like how you were when the first spring happened, which is when your menses cycle started. So I love that. Yeah, I love it. And when I have older clients, it's very important for them because their children aren't home and their identity as a mother is gone, right? It's very important for them to transition their work into something creative. So you have to leave your legacy. Like you leave your legacy through your children, but you also leave your legacy through works of art, like books, teachings. And the whole idea, you know, Asian culture is really all about like immortality. And this is what they mean by immortality. It's not like you get to live forever. It's like your spirit, your teachings, your art, your spirit lives on forever.
Yeah. So every little wrinkle is from my 4 a.m. New York party days.
Yeah.
What I love about our culture and most Asian cultures is that we really respect our elders. Like our halmanis and haribajis are like the shit, you know, like, and that's what I love about Korean culture because they have so much wisdom. And I'm actually really sad that I don't have any who are on this earth anymore. But when grandma said like you had to do something, like I did it.
Yeah.
I respected her so much. And I just love what you said about, when they get to the crone stage, it's like their second spring.
Yeah. I mean, like even the term like second spring, that just sounds awesome. I like, and you see older women who like have managed to transition into that. Like you just see I see it. I remember this woman when I was in Portugal and we were at this like bar kind of restaurant on the beach and she was just dancing and she was like much older, probably in her 60s, super sexy,
Mhm.
like, and I don't think you were not used to calling older women sexy, but she was like sensual and sexy and dancing. That's somebody who's found her face. Like she is no longer living for society standards. She's not no longer living for her family standards. Like she is her own woman.
Mhm. So this is called your elemental archetypes, and this is called the Daoist face reading. So are you looking at someone's face and almost like an astrology chart, like looking at their life or their potential? Like how does this actually work?
Yeah. So I'm not like a fortune teller. I can't tell you like what's going to happen in the future. What I can tell you just based on your facial features, which are related to like your behavior or how you communicate or how you think, your gifts, your strengths, your challenges, if you continue on this path, like where it will lead you. And so oftentimes with my clients, they have a specific challenge that they want to work on, but obviously is tied to so many other things. And we always tend to talk about childhood because that's where it starts and how the family has like imprinted their impressions on them. And these aren't things that you don't know. Like, all of this. Like, what your strengths are, your gifts, your talents. You just need somebody to tell you that, right? And then I think that's what it really is. It's like I'm not telling you something that you don't know yourself. You just need somebody else to validate that. And because every client that I'm like, this, right? Like that there's this, you're special and unique in this area, and that you need to honor that, right? And they're like, yeah, I know, but I've had all these insecurities. I'm like, yeah, no, I get it. That's the whole point. But I can't tell you like, next year you're going to meet the love of your life. Like I don't know any of that.
And what are the markers? I'm just so curious. I've never heard of this before. So what are the markers? Like, do you look at the cheeks? Do you look at the shape of the eyes? Like, how do you read?
Everything, like everything from the shape of your face to the lines. There are some face readers that do moles. I don't do moles really. Yeah, the corner of your lips. It's very much like Chinese medicine, where we're trained to look at things on a very micro level and macro, and it's constantly zooming in, zooming out, zooming in. So like as an acupuncturist, if somebody came with a sprained ankle, we're literally looking at like the swelling, the redness, the hot, but then also looking systemically, like what's going on in their whole body, and then going back to that. So
Yeah.
that's what I do with face reading, is literally look at like the tiny corners of your eyes or your mouth, and then zooming it out, and then seeing like how this all fits in your whole face, and then going back to what your challenge is. And um, some people actually, most people are very easy to read. It's because they're not hiding anything. It's very hard and I've never had a client like this, but I've definitely met them in my personal life, um, like narcissists or
Mhm.
like sociopaths. They're very difficult to read because they put this mask almost.
Yeah.
Now I'm much more aware because um, I've had experience with them now personally, but uh, it's very hard when I think in a client setting it's easier because I'm in like client mode, but when it's my personal life, I
Mhm.
don't see it. Like I'm not face reading everybody I meet, and then
Really?
yeah. And then your like your emotions are, well, so obviously when your emotions, which are also like your own insecurities and whatever, that mask everything. So I can't like, it probably explains like why I've ended up in the relationships I've ended up, because I can't see it when it's so close to me.
Yeah. So how do you read somebody who's had plastic surgery, because those Koreans, man, they love their plastic surgery. They all look the same. They all have the same haircuts, the same hair color. So can you read somebody who's had work done or had Botox?
Yeah. So in the intake, I asked them if they've had Botox or facial reconstruction. And to me, like, I don't care. Like, I really honestly don't care. I would what happens is I'll just note, because especially Botox, then I can't see the lines. Mm-hmm. And so with Botox, it's just what ends up happening, because you're freezing that part of your face. That wrinkle is going to come back, because that's why people continue to get Botox, right? And that wrinkle comes back is because you're frowning or whatever. Let's say frowning, right? You're frowning. Then you have to really go back, like, how many years have you been frowning? And like, why were you frowning? Is it because you're a skeptical person, you're an angry person, you just don't trust people? Or maybe it could be simple as like, you need glasses. Like, you know, that's why you're like squinting, right? But you have to, but it's like not gonna go away because your behavior hasn't changed. And so obviously that wrinkle is good, and it's years of that. So it's really cemented into your face. With facial reconstruction, it's harder for me to read. And it's mostly because I'll see like, wow, this is like a beautiful nose. Like I had one client who had a nose job, and I kept going back to her nose because it didn't quite fit her whole face. It was gorgeous though. I was like, this is a beautiful nose, but like something is off. Like I can't read it. And then I went back. I'm like, she had a nose job, so this is good. So that's, I mean, it's good because I was like doubting myself. But we talked about it. And obviously that changes your personality, and it changes in Daoism, like your Dao, your purpose in life. And that could be good or bad. It could be a conscious decision, not conscious decision, but it will change you. So example, like somebody with a very prominent big nose, they tend to be very innovative thinkers, like leaders. They think outside of the box. They're pushing our boundaries. And if somebody is not ready for that in this life and they choose to get a nose job, then they'll get a cute small nose. But that means people won't take them as seriously. Like they'll be this nice, cute person with this really cute nose, and much more of like a background kind of person, rather than like pushing us forward into the future. So it only becomes a problem when they have the nose job, but their spirit hasn't changed. They still want to be like a leader in their field. They still want to push boundaries. They're still like pushing and like leading us, but nobody's taking them seriously because they just see this really cute face. You know, they're not this like bold, fierce person. And so we have to just work with that. And then it's really like, okay, so you didn't know this when you got the nose job. So now how can we do this? And my thinking is that you can kind of, you know, in acupuncture, you can do phantom limb acupuncture. So people who without limbs, they can still feel the acupuncture. I still feel that with certain features. But you see this kind of like with, you know, actresses like, wow, what's her name? Remember Dirty Dancing,
Jennifer Grey.
Right. She had a prominent nose, right?
Yes.
She was like in Ferris Bueller. She did Dirty Dancing. She was like up top. And then she got the nose job and she was gone.
Disappeared.
And then she came back with like a TV series in the 90s. Yes. But she looked so different.
You're
and there
right.
was something very interesting about her face. But she had this personality of somebody that still had that nose. And where is she now? I don't know.
You're so right.
So that's what I mean, shifts your Dao.
It almost shifts your destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what that
is.
Dao is. But that's what's so sad. And I've never had to get to a point where I had to alter my face yet, thank God. But I see so many Korean young people doing plastic surgery, getting nose jobs, and I'm almost like, what is going through their mind that they feel that they're not beautiful enough or good enough that they would have to change their face? Like that to me is psychological too. Like they don't feel like they could show up, or they don't deserve something because of the way they look. And that to me is also a shift of your destiny, because if you aren't confident no matter what you look like, then how are you ever going to accomplish your dreams?
Yeah, I think Korean culture is like, ugh, it's just a lot of the actors and singers, they're part of this contract. Like they're just they have to get plastic surgery, and it's so normal in our culture to get plastic surgery. Like people, at least for me, people will tell me like, oh, you should get this done, you should get that. I've had opportunities to get plastic surgery, and who knows, maybe I will later. I don't know. But I think going into it knowing that like I want this because of this reason. But I think with younger folks, this younger people, you don't know what you want. Like I think back when I was in my 20s, like I had no idea what I wanted to do or who I was. And then especially with Korean culture, when it's like the media or like their agents or whoever forcing that, then I'm curious to know like how all of that really shifts like the country's consciousness,
Yeah.
like on a much more bigger scale, and then what that really means.
No, I think that is a problem because of not feeling inherent worthiness and the mental health of it all. And I just see so much in from afar. And again, like I'm not a part of that culture. I don't live there. I've never lived there, but I just see how everybody tries to look the same. And then kind of what you were saying with the nose, then you just kind of like fade into the background and you're just like another person that looks the same. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah, I mean, they're it. I wish, yeah, I think when you do get plastic surgery, you should look like yourself. But in Korea,
Mhm.
it's literally like carbon copies of the same nose, same,
Mhm.
what is it? Um, there's like the neighborhood where all of them, all the plastic surgeons are.
Gangnam.
Yeah, yeah, right. And ah, but then that is kind of like Korean culture. Like you're supposed to all think like as a collective, like consciousness, like, like nobody is really supposed to stand out. It's
Mhm.
supposed to be very unified. And I think a lot of the plastic surgery too, or like the money and wealth has a lot to do with Korean history, which makes me sad. Is just it was a very poor country for so long, and like with this very brutal history, and then all of a sudden it became like super wealthy very
And
fast.
not that long ago.
Yeah, not that long
Only
ago.
like 30 years ago. Not even.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you like, I was just there a few years ago, just um on my way to Taiwan, and I was surprised. Like even the buildings all look the same. It's like carbon copies of all these buildings, and there's tons of money like
Mhm.
uh in Korea. But yeah, it's such a small country still.
Um, I'm so curious because um, people always asked me when I was growing up, did I ever get the double eyelid surgery?
Mhm.
And my sister was still to this day, she gets bullied to do it. She hasn't. But if you change that, like what does that mean? I'm so curious.
That's less, because it's more like the space between your eyes, and if anything, it might open your eyes a little bit more. So my dad got that surgery only because his top eyelid was just like, he's just good from age, like it was literally covering his vision, like his eyes. So he had to get it for like medical reasons. So we make fun of him, like, when's the nose job? Like, you got the sunk up with, like, you look so beautiful. But it was literally for medical reasons because he could not see, because just that
Yeah,
extra skin. And
right.
so if it makes that big of a difference, it's more like your vision of like the world might open up, or like, but um people who get that, like, again, they tend to have to get it again like later on in life, right? Because it's like your face is changing, and
Mhm.
um yeah.
Wow, so interesting. I could talk about this. I could ask you like 1,000 questions, but I really wanted to get into the activism part of your work and how what really stood out to me was that you are so vocal about the fact that this is an ancient medicine and that and I would love to know your intention about that. Like who is this directed to, or is this just educational? What is your call to action?
This is definitely directed to all the professional organizations in my profession. So, like, state, national organizations that we pay memberships, that we pay licensing, that we give money to, that they're supposed to be lobbying for our rights,
Mhm.
and the schools who are continuously creating very violent environments for students. The success rate of acupuncturists is like terrible. You graduate and it's very difficult to make a career out of this. And it's just, and they don't care. And it's just, you know, it's just a business. And even as a business though, like you even see big brands right now who are huge businesses talking about compassion and kindness for their employees, and to not even see that in a medical profession where you're supposed to be training people to have empathy, like major empathy skills, and not even showing that for your own students or your own members it's problematic. Like how can you then talk about DEI and cultural awareness and all of that? And I mean, to this day, it's been a year since there's been a rise of violence amongst Asians, and no public statement. They've had all these DEI workshops and webinars, no Asian representation, none whatsoever, like nothing about cultural appropriation. Uh, yeah, and it they're constantly perpetuating the model minority stereotype that all Asians were all this one big group that were able to work hard and we're all rich.
Mhm.
And that's not true. There's tons of subgroups, even Koreans, like in Erica Lee's Making of Asian America, she breaks down the immigrants that are under the socioeconomic class, and Koreans we're not even like the big ones on top, right? And so, because a lot of our family, they immigrated here in the 70s when we had to come into this. It wasn't like in the 90s where they were having engineers and professors immigrate. It was in the 70s. So you had to come in different ways. My family came in through the military. So these were like working class people. Um, but yeah, they're directed to the education, the higher academics. Yeah.
That's very helpful to know because I was always wondering, like, this is
What
like,
am I screaming to?
yeah, like, no, but it was super helpful information. But I was definitely wondering because it's very apparent that you're talking to somebody, like you're pointing something out. And I didn't know, I guess it's like everything an institution is that there is an institution and business around this ancient practice.
Yeah. I also hope that like acupuncturists and students, white acupuncturists, BIPOC acupuncturists, Asians, like are also listening on and thinking about their privilege and where they stand. Um, a lot of the pushback I've gotten actually have been from other Asians
Mm,
and younger Asians, which blows my mind.
mm,
And that's a whole other thing that I have to like deal with of it says a lot about white supremacy when people of color don't know their history and
mhm,
then they think they're fighting for something that isn't true.
mm.
That makes me sad. At first it pissed me off and then I had to step back and do my meditation, and now I'm at a point where I feel sad for them, like that they don't know that racism against Asians exists or xenophobia exists. You know, they've put themselves so close to white
Mhm.
proximity that they think they're white, and so they think they're somehow they don't consider themselves a BIPOC, and so they don't think that these things happen to us.
Oh boy, this is why people need to read books.
Yeah.
Read a fucking history book, people. Oh my goodness. I mean, the fact that, the reason why Asians were even able to come to this country was because of Black people. Like, let's just start there. And this is why I believe it's all of us against white supremacy. If none of us are free, if none of us are equal, then none of us are. That's just the simple matter of the fact. Um, but I love your work. I love what you do. It's so unique. You're so inspirational. And anytime I read your quote, I'm like, man, I wish I could say it like that.
Oh, that's so nice.
Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you wanted to share?
Um, no, I like how you wrapped it up. I think there needs to be, I think where I am with my work is that I'm kind of tired of being angry. I think that anger can just drive you so much, and you have to find a way to transform that anger. And that's what I love about Chinese medicine, Eastern medicine, is that anger is this emotion related to spring. But the flip side of that anger is when you go deep with your anger, you actually cultivate your humanitarian traits and values. And I think that's what I love about Eastern medicine. It's like whatever I do, I can go back to that and it makes sense. And so I think with social justice or health justice work, I really want to work towards like compassion and kindness. And that doesn't mean like excusing people's behavior or not making them accountable and not calling them out, but more compassion and kindness for ourselves. Like I think that needs, while we do this work, before we even give compassion and kindness to other people, we have to really like give it to ourselves.
I love what you said because anger is just energy that can be transmuted into creativity.
Yes.
So I believe that, and Saturday's Aries season, my season, and it's all about the fire energy and how to use that fire and that anger, because it's just energy. How you channel it is unique to yourself. And I just think that what you said is so beautiful, that it can be a catalyst for change.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Oh my God, we're gonna have to have a part 2 on love relationships.
Yeah. Oh God.
Because I feel like there are many stories to be told there.
Yeah. It might be like a therapy session, less like a podcast episode.
Well, I will link all of her information down below. Thank you so much, Tamsin. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Laura.